Hi everybody, my name is Cindy Krum, and today we're going to talk about EEAT in the real world, requirements, efforts, and outcomes. This talk was originally given at SMX Munich 2024, but has also been given under a different name, EEAT Your Soup, How Quality Evaluations Really Work and Why You Should Care, at Recommerce 2024 in London. If you don't know who I am, my name is Cindy Krum, and I'm the CEO of MobileMoxie. I've been doing SEO since 2003, started my company in 2008. Have focused on mobile and international and technical SEO, wrote a book in 2010, and have gotten to work with some of the biggest brands in the world. In 2022, I was named by USA Today as one of the top 10 most influential SEO experts. So I've been around and I know things. I also have a reputation for being able to explain what Google is doing and why, and kind of doing it before they talk about things publicly. So with that in mind, let's jump into the topic, starting with some basics. What is EEAT and why should we care? Most SEOs know that EEAT is an abbreviation for expertise, experience, authority, and trust. Originally, it just had one E, but they added experience in later. And as SEOs, we try and interpret, things that Google talks about as action items or things that we can do or look at for SEO benefit. So some SEOs believe that expertise is associated with authorships and bios for authors and history that an author has on a topic. And experience is proof of a lived relationship, or authority might be relevant citations from industry websites or resources, and trust might be like a digital footprint that a company has where they have social media profiles and mentions on business directories and stuff like that. And so we've turned that into things that you can do. If you think that your site might not have enough expertise, experience, authority, and trust, you can add author pages, add schema, add proof of details related to human experience or pictures showing you with a product. You can have better citations and links from respected sources or more respected sources. Or you can have a strong brand history with same as schema and lots of links and active social profiles and interactions with customers. And that's all great. And I think those things, definitely could help in SEO. But I've always kind of had a problem with EEAT because to me, they all sound like basically the same thing. Like if you have authority, shouldn't you also have trust? And if you have trust, isn't it probably because you have experience? And they all kind of blended together into something that's really hard to extricate. And it seemed like SEOs were focusing on the different letters and saying, oh, well, we have enough T, but do we have enough A? Or do we have enough expertise, but do we have enough experience shown, and things like that? And to me, that always seems like the wrong question. And it misses the point because Google has said very specifically that EEAT is not a formal part of Google's algorithm. It's only part of the quality rater guidelines. They've said in particular, they train human raters to understand if content has EEAT signals. And they outline those signals in the quality rater guidelines. And they go on to explain that it isn't a specific ranking factor, but it uses a mix of factors that could identify content with good EEAT. But this is all from a human perspective. And then they also say, EEAT factors could change from one topic to another, one query to another, based on the need to prove quality. So things that demand higher standards like health, finance, the welfare of people or the welfare of society, those things might require more proof that they're high quality, where other things might require less proof that they're high quality. But all of this, again, is not part of the algorithm per se. It's part of the human training material for search quality raters. It's guidelines, and it's an acronym that they gave humans so that they could remember what they were looking for when they were evaluating the quality of a page that ranked in search results that they were asked to review. And so they say many times that some topics require less expertise and that these things change. And so it's hard to come back to SEOs who are talking about EEAT as if it's a checklist and you need this, this, and this to have the right EEAT signals, when Google says specifically it changes based on the topic, based on the YMYL kinds of requirements. So I think historically, like, SEOs may have been talking about this wrong. And that leads us into some drama, right? That happened during February on Twitter, of course, because that's where all the drama happens. And it was kind of kicked off by some of the Google representatives. And what I want to start by saying is these people are super smart, super nice, dedicated group of humans that are trying to communicate very complex concept in a very simplified way. But I think this communication, especially related to EEAT, kind of went sideways. So what happened was there was a thread about Core Web Vitals, and the search liaison from Google, Danny Sullivan, chimed in and said, these things aren't actually ranking factors. Core Web Vitals isn't a ranking factor. EEAT isn't a ranking factor. And then he specified that it's also not a list of signals. Like, there's no EEAT list of signals because that can change. And then he said, don't worry about this list of EEAT signals. Instead, focus on your user. And when SEOs hear this, we get kind of frustrated and tired of it because Google uses it so often as a way to get out of addressing topics in any kind of specific way. And they just say, well, create content that your users will like. And so this tweet created a bunch of drama. And so it had to be followed up with another tweet where Danny came back to try and add clarity. And he said, EEAT, again, isn't a ranking factor or a thing that factors into other ranking factors. And he said that Google doesn't actually do anything to verify or evaluate any of your experts' credentials. And then he doubled down on people first content, and that you should just make things that your users would like. And this really made news. This was a big deal because a lot of people did assume that EEAT, even if it wasn't a ranking factor, it factored into other ranking factors, and they assumed that somehow Google was vetting who claimed to be an authority or not. So there was a lot of attention given to this thread on Twitter. And so Danny came back kind of a final time, and he tried to quell the drama by saying that we use signals and factors fairly synonymously, because everyone had come back and said, well, maybe it's not a signal, but it's a ranking factor. Or is it a ranking? Maybe it's a signal, but it's a factor of factors, or a signal for other signals to use. And he came in and he said, no, like, you guys are really going too far. We use signal and factor interchangeably. And he also kind of threw systems in, that we use ranking systems interchangeably a little bit. And he said signals and factors are like fuel, that systems are, and the systems are the machines that's using these fuel components to make decisions. And this was so, well-intended, but definitely confusing and not especially helpful. And it inspired a bunch of great memes like this one, and of course caused more news. And all of this discussion kind of led to just kind of a little bit of anger towards Google because none of it made any sense, and it wasn't helpful. It wasn't explanatory. It just kind of fell flat in terms of helping SEOs do a good job at what they're trying to do, at helping their customers or their websites. So I think this is important. I think it's important for a number of reasons, and I want to kind of try and explain what I think happened here and why. So first, let me explain the theme of this deck, which is soup. I think that EEAT style signals are a lot like soup because there are a lot of different final results that are based on some primary elements or ingredients. And you can add one ingredient and it changes the whole flavor of a soup, but it'll never stand on its own. The one ingredient is not the ranking factor or is not the soup. It has to be a mix of ingredients. And once one ingredient is added, it can't be fully isolated or removed. It's a grouping of things together that make an exquisite soup. And so when you think about EEAT in terms of soup, you can think about the quality rater guidelines as a tasting guide, like how you understand what you're looking at in this soup. And as SEOs, we have this kind of need for checklists, and so we act like a cook where we need a specific list of ingredients and what to do to make a decent soup. But what Google's saying is that we kind of need to elevate to, instead of being a cook, being a great chef, where we don't have to have a specific checklist of things that go in the soup and things that we need to do. We need to be able to look and evaluate the soup and be able to tell how it was made and what ingredients it contains so that we can recreate that soup in some exquisite form. And I think that's really a better analogy for EEAT than, for instance, the machine that eats signals and factors. So let's break this down a little bit more. To understand EEAT properly, I think you need to understand that it's probably not a binary evaluation. It's not, do you have EEAT, yes or no? And it's not, do you have authority, yes or no? Or do you have trust, yes or no? Algorithms don't usually work like that. They're usually much more about thresholds, and things are evaluated on a spectrum with scores, right? And so it's not a yes or no thing. And it's not universal. And Google says that, multiple times when they say, things are different based on YMYL, but also different topics require different levels of EEAT signals. So again, there could never be a checklist because it's not universal. So it's not going to be like, here's your checklist for a medical EEAT, evaluation that's good. There might be different things even within medical or even within YMYL. And in fact, I think there most definitely are. And then last thing is EEAT evaluations are not stationary. They're not set in stone. They have to adapt. And Danny even said that things change. And so it couldn't be a simple list of things that you need to have the right EEAT. And I like to give this example about words changing meaning. So this is 2 examples of the word flossing. There's the old tooth flossing idea, and then there's flossing the dance, which became really popular and had its heyday and then kind of went away. And you can see that in this Google Trends graph for flossing, where we have one spike and then another longer kind of sustained spike for flossing. And you can add in the flossing dance that happens at the same time, where the word flossing changed. And that means the EEAT signals for what was a quality result for flossing changed. So originally it might have been considered maybe a YMYL topic because it had a medical context, because dental and medical, there's risk factors there. But then it changed to an entertainment style query almost overnight, right? And what Google could see was likely that people were searching for flossing but playing videos or clicking on different kinds of results, not about how-to tutorials to floss your teeth correctly, but like maybe videos of a dance, or maybe a how-to tutorial about how to do the dance, but definitely not stuff about teeth. And what you have to remember is that Google has to do this on, millions of topics in all of the languages around the world every single day, and that things like this could be happening every single day, where a word is recontextualized or gains new meaning or has a new interpretation, or a topic has a new interpretation, or things like that. The systems have to be dynamic, and they have to be fluid, and they have to adapt, because no one called Google and said, hey, the meaning of flossing has changed. Google had to have signals that it interpreted to re-understand that query and rank the right things in the right context. And so I think the reality here is that Google doesn't know exactly what's in the soup all the time. They just know that they like it. And this is especially true of Google representatives. They don't know exactly what's in the soup. They just know that they like it because it's getting the right engagement signals from the search result. So that's tough. How should we understand EEAT as SEOs? SEOs love checklists, and I'm saying there's no checklist. And I'm saying, in fact, the checklist, even if there was one, it would change all the time. So how do we apply this understanding? Well, first, I think you need to acknowledge that we've learned new things about Google, that Google for many years has said that they weren't using clicks as a ranking factor, but it's come out in some of the cases that they absolutely were. And in fact, this internal slide that was part of the evidence in one of the Google cases says that the 3 pillars of ranking, so it's an internal slide where someone talking about the algorithm is explaining it to other Googlers. It's saying 3 pillars of ranking are the body, so the content, the anchors, so like links, and then user interactions, what they say about the topic, and asterisks. If they don't have user interactions and saying things about the topic, they might use clicks as a stand-in for user interactions. And I want you to notice the serif on the Google logo. They've been doing this for a long time and denying it. But I think as SEOs, we need to understand this and understand that we may not even realize how much this is playing into all of the rankings that we've been, trying to optimize for years. And I'm not the only one that thinks this. Kevin Indig wrote a great article called The Elephant in the Room that kind of highlights this idea that this has come out, this has come to light. Google has been using click and engagement data as part of their rankings, but SEOs are still not talking about it because we're so used to Google saying that they didn't do it. And, people jumping on you and saying, Google says that they don't use click data, but they do. And we need to start talking about this a bit more openly and honestly. And he doesn't go as far as I've gone, saying that EEAT and quality signals are about click data, but I think they are, and here's why. I think the algorithm tries hard to mirror human evaluations based on click data, and it's aggregating the signals that have shown good human engagement in top rankings so far, and then it's looking at pages to say, do you have those kinds of signals that have already shown good engagement data based on what's already ranking and driving good engagement data. And so it's kind of comparing what it knows about what's ranking well and has the right signals and the right engagement, comparing you to that. And so when people like Danny or other people from Google say, do what your users would like, it's actually not as disingenuous as it sounds, because again, they don't know exactly what's in the soup. They just know that they like it. And I think that SEOs are still stuck in this kind of old ranking factor model, where in the old days of SEO, we were looking for checklists. That's how we operated, and we were thinking about things like one at a time, like this hand drawing of a face where you're like, well, it has eyes and it has a nose and it has a mouth. Like, that's definitely a face. And the algorithm isn't that basic anymore. We're kind of ignoring all of the changes that have come around in the algorithm based on machine learning and artificial intelligence in the back end. And that's why Google has switched from talking about individual ranking factors as if there could be a checklist to ranking systems where things are evaluated in clusters of signals that may or may not be necessary for everything and every topic to rank, but it might be necessary for this topic to rank, or it might be necessary in this query. And that's why there are systems that take something, process it, look for something, and then maybe pass it to a different system. And that makes the algorithm efficient, but it gives you like a much richer evaluation where it's not just a checklist, it's the interaction of a bunch of different things in a very nuanced and deep way that could never be replicated with just a checklist. And so that's why, again, like, they don't know exactly what's in the soup, they just know that they like it. And Pedro Diaz, an ex-Googler, says this, kind of expresses the same thought really well when he says search is so complex, even scientists and engineers working every day to design and improve it can't figure out how to nail it 100% or explain it with a high degree of confidence. Like, they don't always know what it takes to get into those top positions because it's a very nuanced thing, and it's a comparison of things that aren't listed out in a checklist, even to Googlers and even to the people writing the algorithm. And so I think you can look at this and say, well, so perhaps what's happened is we've been looking at things the wrong way. We've been thinking that putting schema on a page helps its rankings and then you get more traffic. But what if it's the other way around, and putting schema on a page changes the way your page looks like in a search result because you get the rich result, and that drives better click data, which makes it look more like the things that are ranking in the top pages. So yes, having the schema helps if the top ranking pages have it, but maybe it's more a function of, are you getting the right kind of clicks and engagement on the page? And remember, it's not just clicks, it's dwell time, it's pogo sticking, it's a lot of different ranking factors, it's a lot of different engagement factors. But we know that Google wants to rank content that users will like and engage with. That's their goal, is to show the best kinds of content. And so that's why also things like adding a price on a service area business might be useful. So if you're a plumber and you don't have the price for different kind of plumbing visits, but then you add them, all of a sudden you start to rank. Do we think that Google is actually looking for the price, or do we think that Google is looking for things that make it look like top ranking pages for similar topics, and they do happen to have prices? Because in fact, people like dealing with businesses that honestly represent their prices, so that they know that they won't get gouged when they call a plumber out and the plumber gives kind of an unexpected rate. And so, yeah, again, it's not necessarily that the signals and factors are different per se. It's that what's being measured is engagement from users as a signal of quality, and as a comparison to what's already getting good engagement. So from an SEO perspective, how do we optimize for this? If they're not binary, there's no checklist, it's always changing. Well, first we have to understand that there's overlap here. When you change things on your content, your metadata, your links, that can be an engagement signal, or that can affect an engagement signal and affect your traffic. So these aren't binary either. They all kind of flow together. But start, I think, by looking at the topic that you're trying to optimize for in terms of risk, and say, is it a high risk topic or a low risk topic? And you can think about this in terms of your money or your life kinds of topics. Is this something that creates risk to human life, livelihood, or, success? Or is it more funsies? Is it entertainment? And so you can I put together just a list of topics and group them into what I would guess are high risk versus low risk. So high risk is medical, financial, investment, science, health, those kinds of things. And maybe further on down with a little bit less risk is news and politics, self-help, business, education. And then you go on a little bit further to the greener side of things, where there's some risk, but not a lot of risk, like a high cost e-commerce purchase, like a car, or maybe travel bookings, real estate, automotive, repair, B2B and SaaS kinds of things. Those have risk, but not as much risk as health. And then there's the lowest side, which is like low cost e-commerce, recipes, DIY, gaming, entertainment, offline commerce, things that don't need to be checked as rigorously. And you can see that in these kinds of things, there just might be naturally different signals of quality. So when you are in the high risk side, you do need maybe citations, authoritative links, authorship, source data, charts and graphs, some kind of pedigree. But know that Google isn't actually vetting the pedigree. It's not actually checking those. It's just kind of matching and saying, well, all these ones that are getting good engagement have this. Does that new page that we're evaluating have this? And then you move on down the line. And see that, like on the low risk side, maybe things that are a signal of quality are things like social engagement, interactivity, rich media, videos, timely updates, right? If this is a trend, mentions, shares, reviews, influencers, stuff like that, where it's a lower risk, but there are different ways that people engage with low risk topics versus high risk topics. And then you can just go and look at the actual search results to try and understand, like, what does Google care about? And you're looking at the non-standard things like filters and disambiguation, knowledge graph. People also ask carousels, buying guides, deals. That's how Google like is explicitly telling you they understand the topic. But then looking at the top ranking pages and what is there. And you can look at the things that are traditionally considered part of EEAT, or look at other things that you might determine help with engagement. And just know that it's going to change and it's not always going to be the same. And this example comes from Kevin Indig's article, where he talks about when you search for QR code reader, the #1 ranking page is just called Web QR. And all it is a single page kind of, 4-page website that has a QR code reader that works immediately and doesn't have a lot of other stuff on it. And that's what's ranking #1. And so you can know that like it's ranking #1, but it doesn't have a bunch of keywords on the page, and it doesn't have a bunch of images, and it doesn't have schema. So, this would fail a lot of the EEAT checklists out there, but it's still ranking #1. And that's what tells me like EEAT is about other things. And it's still about the evaluation of quality, but it's definitely not about a checklist. So as an SEO, you need to really look at this and say, okay, like what's happening here is this is just a really easy to use QR code scanner, and people like that. And so they engage with it. And so you can use tools like Through, THRUUU, and this is recommended to me from Arson. He recommended this tool from Top Hat Rank, and I think it's a great tool. And what it does is you can put in a query, put in the language, put in the country, and it'll pull the search results and compare them. Now, this is the QR code reader evaluation, and it has slightly different rankings. So maybe there's a caching problem here, but you can still look and see that the page that ranks #1 in our query that they have as #6 has only 11 words on the page. The arrows show you that the top ranking pages have 11 words, 27 words, 32 words, and 40 words on the page. So what it takes to rank for this query is not more text. And then you can look at the blue arrows and see the number of images on the page. And you can see that the site in position 3 has only 1 image. The site in position 4 has only 2. Position 6 and 7 have 3 and 4 images. So adding images isn't what's going to help in this particular query. The tool also will tell you how many H2 tags are on the page. It'll tell you things like schema markup. It'll give you performance metrics, stuff like that. And so you can go back and look at your real search result. And in this case, we're looking at soup recipes, and you can see, okay, it's got some soup filters, recipe lists, discussion, and all that stuff, but then layer over it with information and numbers from the Through tool to see that, like, in terms of minimums and maximums, to be in the top 6 positions, you need a minimum of 670 words. You need a page rank according to Through of 54 or higher. You need a minimum of 35 images. So this is a wildly different result. In the other one, you didn't need images. In this one, you absolutely do. But then you can also see things that you don't need. You don't need to have recent content because soup recipes don't change a whole lot with time. So dates on your content or being published recently doesn't seem to matter. Being as old as 2019 is fine in these results. Schema, only 2 of the top 6 have schema, so maybe that shouldn't be your top priority. And links, you don't need more than 65 links. And in fact, the site in position 2 had 245 links, and the site in position 1 had 65, and having 245 links didn't make it better than having 65. So links isn't the thing that was making the difference there. And the tool can also give you things like keyword clusters that are grouped by top 10, top 5, or top 3 results and say, what are the topics that are covered in these results? It can pull the images and alt tags and say, here's what images on these pages look like. Do you have images that look like that? It can pull all the heading tags and put it into an outline and say, this is like the basic outline for the top ranking pages. And it can pull the top cited sources and links by mention from the top ranking sites and show you if links do matter, then maybe this is what you need to look at. But you can't just use the tool and wait for the tool to tell you what to do. You have to look at the real results and look at the feedback from the tool and what are the minimums and maximums, and then say, do we have that? Yes or no? And what are we lacking the most in terms of what's ranking here? So I love that tool for this. If you don't want to go that route, there's another great kind of more manual tool from Cyrus Shepard of Zippy. He used to be a Google Quality Rater, and so he used the Quality Rater guidelines, so he knows all about how human quality raters are giving feedback to Google. So he made a little worksheet that you can fill in to show what you think the quality raters might say about your page, and then kind of think about how the algorithm might be evaluating that. Knowing that quality raters and EEAT signals are human oriented, and that Google is looking for more of a indistinguishable mix of quality signals, right? Similarly, you can use an AI-based tool like this one from Ran Zhang called AI EEAT Checker, and it evaluates it one page at a time, but it'll tell you like what's working on this page in terms of like what are known kind of considered EEAT signals that SEOs are usually looking at. Again, it's not as sophisticated to tell you the click data, but it will give you kind of some basic feedback. And then the last thing I would say is if you're at a loss and you don't know where you're falling short for EEAT style quality signals, you might try Also Asked by Mark Williams Cook. It's a great tool that maps out Google's understanding of a topic based on related People Also Ask queries. And it's language and country specific as well. And it can give you a topic map of what Google understands for the query. So that could help, or just targeting People Also Ask with questions and answers on your page might be useful, because I think Google may be using People Also Ask results as kind of a test to see like, is this query the same as that query, or is this different? And when people search for that, do they also care about this? And it's kind of like a way to cut in line, which can potentially give you a way to get enough good engagement signals that even though you don't fit as closely with what's in the top 3, you have enough good engagement signals that Google decides you should rank there, right? So I think that might be how People Also Ask is factoring in, and that might be a way you can test it out. So, okay, let's wrap this up in some long-term thought processes about why EEAT is important for Google. I think you have to think about Google as a business and as a long-term business, and what they care about right now is AI and how they can advance their Gemini system to make it and keep it competitive with other threats like ChatGPT and stuff coming out of Bing, Copilot, and stuff like that. And the problem with the way Google has looked at things, way back in the past, is they were using ranking factors, not ranking systems, and so they weren't narrowing things down in a way that makes them easy to process. If you're just doing a checklist, you can say, do all of these pages fit the checklist? But things have gotten more complicated, so you have to kind of narrow down the pool, because the web is only getting bigger. So you have to narrow down what you're evaluating and what you're including as fodder for a potential AI result. And I think EEAT is important there. So think about EEAT style quality signals as a threshold for like a minimum threshold for being considered to be passed on to another system, and that would be the helpful content system. So does this have the minimum threshold of quality signals to be evaluated by the helpful content system? Yes. And then once it's in the helpful content system, it's like, is this adding anything to the conversation? Is this useful? We know it's quality. We know it's got quality signals, or the things that humans have indicated are associated with quality. But now, is it adding anything? Is it helpful for users? And then if it is, then maybe it can be added to the LLM models, MUM and BERT and things like that, so that it can become part of the learning and training data. And only then, when it's incorporated, can it be part of an AI, SGE, or Gemini style result? Because if you're processing everything, that would be heavy and slow. So you've got to not only limit what gets into the processing and the AI style evaluations, but you've got to make sure that it's high quality and that it's meeting certain thresholds. And I think you also want to make sure that it isn't AI generated, because if we're re-ingesting AI generated content, then the snake kind of eats the tail, and it might over index on some information that one AI latched onto and then started generating more content, and it's not as useful. So Google needs EEAT style signals to keep from poisoning its AI understanding of the world, to prevent bad data from getting in, or bad data from being replicated or learned permanently. But also to simplify processing and make sure that it's not just processing kind of the same set of facts over and over again, that it's adding useful, unique information to its corpus of understanding and knowledge. So that's the theory. I hope you like the theory. I hope you find this useful when thinking about optimizing for EEAT. And even if you don't, here's a Croissantosaurus Rex just for you and all that EEAT soup. Thanks very much for your time. If you like this video, hit the thumbs up. To be notified about future videos, click the logo. And to try the MobileMoxie mobile SEO toolset, use the promo code YouTube to get 30 days free. They're mobile-first SEO tools for a mobile-first world.